This has become a Steelers tradition. You can't think training camp without thinking about Friday Night Lights. Could be a lot of energy from start to finish. There's a lot to take in with this Steelers team. It's been fast and furious since we got out here. If Norman Rockwell painted high school football, this is what he would paint.
Here we go, Steelers, here we go!
There were 13,957 fans packed at Latrobe Memorial Stadium for Friday Night Lights, and you are taking a live look at St. Vincent College. I'm Missi Matthews with Max Starks. Welcome to Training Camp Live, presented by FedEx. I don't know the official count, but when we look over at the Hillbacks, Steelers Nation came out here for this Saturday practice, and to their delight maybe, after pads on Friday night, the Steelers are in pads again today.
Yeah, you got the appetizer last night, and just when you thought that might have been the entree, a second platter comes out, and you get Saturday, 2 o'clock-ish. You now get another padded practice with this team, and I think one of the fun things is when you kind of get that Friday night, people are off work, and then, of course, you can carry it over to Saturday, and I think that's what makes it fun, and that makes this unique, unlike a lot of other places around the league, where you can have this type of access and you can see your team competitively in pads back-to-back days.
All right, well, someone in pads today is Mika Fitzpatrick. He's back with the Steelers. We'll take you down to the field in just a little bit, but there was something different about Friday Night Lights last night. Mike Tomlin, Steelers head coach, was not there, but it was for a very good reason.
Well, anytime you get asked to have this opportunity and you get to jacket one of your own, one of the kids, your guys that you actually they grew up in similar places, not far away from each other in Virginia, and then you coach him with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What a tremendous night for Mike T, who's just across the border over there in Canton. And of course, I'm sure it's going to be a really special moment tonight when the full enshrinement goes on this evening, when Rodney Barber is now the newest member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
And Coach Tomlin missed Friday night, but he was back here on campus for the Steelers walkthrough. He's out there now for practice as well. And since we're talking about Coach Tomlin, the Steelers social team was asking all the players, what's your favorite Tomlinism? We're going to tell you about that in just a little bit, but I went on social media to get the fan perspective, Max. So let's go through some of them because there's quite a few that you can pick from.
Yes.
2 dogs, 1 bone.
That's standard. I mean, that is an oldie, goodie, and always.
Does that go back to, for you, Antonio Brown, Emmanuel Sanders?
Well, it was
Mike Wallace.
Yeah, Mike Wallace and Antonio Brown with the contract.
That's right. That's right.
So, yeah.
Not seeking comfort. You just said that actually before we got on air.
Right before we got on air. And I was seeking comfort because a breeze had come through the tent, so I was happy.
Windshield is bigger than our rear view.
That's a good one.
That's probably after a loss.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, there's a reason why that is what you see when you walk into the Steelers locker room inside Acrisure Stadium.
Yes, it is, and the standard is always the standard. He said that since day one, and now that message doesn't change 17 years later.
Mm-hmm. Don't blink. If you blink, we'll cut your eyelids off. I don't know if you had a chance to see Grilling and Chilling with him, with Zach Gentry and Pat Fryermuth, but they had some fun with that one.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one.
We're still squirreling those nuts. That's kind of one of the more obscure ones that he doesn't use all the time, but when he uses it, your ears perk up. And
yes.
This is pretty much every Tomlin Tuesday. We'll let his participation be our guide in the early portions of the week.
Every injury report since he started reporting injuries has been that. It is a good one.
All right, what's your favorite Tomlinism?
Well, it goes similarly along to the 2 dogs, 1 bone, but it's 2 trains, 1 track is always one that I enjoy hearing. I know it's a hybrid off of that one. But then, of course, iron sharpens iron. I didn't see anybody that put iron sharpens iron because that is an axiom when you think of the Steelers and you think of not only the literal name, but also how it goes out there on the field, you have good on good practicing on a daily basis. So it's great to see that.
And there you see Coach Tomlin sporting the white hat there.
Okay.
My favorite is an obscure
Vince
one.
Williams.
Oh, that is Vince.
Yeah, that's Big Vin. Okay, I see you, Vince.
We're going to have to give Vince Williams credit since we're looking at him, but he had suggested on Twitter not too long ago that he thought Kendrick Green would make a great fullback.
Oh, he did.
And we're going to talk about that.
God, Nostradamus there.
He could take a little credit right now.
Yeah, go
give
ahead.
himself a
Take
pat on the back.
Or take a brow wipe.
Or maybe he's talking about, hey, I like what happened last night.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're taking it all in because they both weren't live for it, but
right.
I'm sure they saw the highlights.
Right. My favorite Tomlinism is excuses are the tools of the incompetent. Yes,
and that is a nice poetic phrase. I can't remember. I used to actually, because Coach Tomlin is also in a fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi. I'm an Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Those are literally on your pledging days. You hear that, and the full term is obviously, excuses are the tools of the incompetent, and those who master them often or seldomly do not amount to anything. So there's a full phrase to that. I'm glad he kind of paraphrases a little bit, but that's something that harkens unto when you're talking about some of our pledging days in our fraternities. So I appreciate that one.
Well, and he always says, having things that are short, not necessarily catchy, but they make you remember them. And if you repeat them enough, the players start talking like him. We all start talking like him because you're just so used to hearing it.
Yeah, and they're always apropos, right? They always come at the right moment when you're thinking, oh man, what is he going to say? And he hits you with it, and then he gives the explanation of why he's done it in relationship to either a player, a performance, or something. And then it's like, oh, I get that. I get that. Thank you, Coach T, for dropping those pearls of wisdom.
All right, let's take a listen to what some of his players had to say when asked what their favorite Tomlinism is.
Favorite Tomlinism, don't get caught in the minutia. We do not care how you got here. And 8 pounds in a 5-pound bag.
Standard is the standard, man. The standard is the standard.
Don't seek that comfort.
You like cut their eyeballs off them, man. Oh yeah, he do be saying that.
No. He be saying routine plays routine. I got 2 of them actually. The first one is going to be pressure is forever relevant. You're either feeling it or applying it, and it's always about the next one, about the next punt, about the next rep. Control what you can control.
All right, you are looking live at St. Vincent College down on the field as the Steelers are getting ready for their practice in pads following Friday Night Football. There you see number 39, Minkah Fitzpatrick, chatting with Ike Taylor and Najee Harris. Minkah, Max, did not practice the first 3 days of camp, and then he was excused for personal reasons by Coach Tomlin, but a great sign when you see him here. You could hear the fans as soon as he hit those steps. Yeah. Excited to see number 39 back out there.
Now, when you see number 39 roaming the backfield, you know that good things are to come. And for Minkah, seeing him, I saw him in the lunchroom right before practice, and it was a breath of fresh air, and you could see everybody excited to see him, welcoming him, his teammates, giving him a hug, giving him a dap to say, hey, man, you're good. We're happy to have you back. And I thought that's also a cool sign. But then, like you said, you get the fan reaction here of seeing 39 on the field in pads, not in the acclimation period.
No.
No, he's getting right back into the action. I heard Grady Brown make this. He was doing an interview yesterday, and he said, he's like, 39's absence, as much as you miss him and his leadership, it gave the young guys an opportunity to play because when 39 is here, he doesn't give up any reps. He's like, he wants every rep. So for the guys like a Keanu Neal early on, a guy like Duke Dawson, and, of course, Trey Norwood and Elijah Riley, they got some very valuable reps. But now 39 is back, so we expect to see him early and often on the field.
And there you see DeMonte KZ, who's been missing some time with an ankle injury. We'll see if he's able to participate in any fashion today. But as soon as Minkah came down the hill and he was here fairly early, he went right over to the jugs machine. And sooner or later, all the DBs just started following, and it was as if he never left.
Yeah, the leadership. I mean, and Minkah, is a guy, he does talk, but his actions always speak louder than his words. And like you said, the ducklings fall in line when the mama duck comes back out and they're going across the river or wherever, and you just see them filing, and you're right. I mean, that's the leadership that he brings. That's the cachet that he has earned, and that is the leader of the secondary.
All right, well, bad news for the defense in terms of Friday Night Lights. The offense won in 7 shots, 5-2. What did you see from them? Because it was really more in the favor of the defense leading into last night's practice.
Well, defense has dominated that drill since we've been here at camp. Offense has had bright spots, but it usually comes down to they're usually on the losing end, usually getting 3 of the 4 necessary wins. But last night, you could tell there was a different vigor from the crowd. There was a different kind of energy for the offense, and they wanted to go out and prove themselves because I think – they had gotten bullied around a little bit, and they'd been blitzed and, forced out plays. And I think they said, no, not in front of the crowd tonight. We got almost 14,000 in front of us, and they're going to give us instant feedback. And you saw them really hone in, sharpen in. Kenny's passes were crisp. Trubisky's passes were crisp, and even Mason Rudolph. All of them had touchdown passes in that 7 shots drill. So I thought that was a good sign where you see all of them on the same page, and they really wanted that win. You could tell they wanted it last night.
All right, there you see at the bottom of your screen, number 53, Kendrick Green, and he surprised a little bit a lot of people last night. Even one of his teammates, Darnell Washington, told the media today during the lunch period, we knew that was like a possibility. We didn't know when it was going to happen during camp, and when it happened, we all got really excited.
And he had 3 amazing plays. If you're talking about grading plays, Kendrick Green last night graded out at 100% at fullback because – he had some plays, and I kind of got detailed in it on the radio show, but I'll condense it here since we're on television. But the first play, he ran what we call a wham or a trap lead type of concept, where he came from the left side and came up and in between the center and the left guard and laid a devastating lead block that popped open for the running back, I think it was Najee Harris, to squirt through the hole and get about a 7-yard gain. Very next play, he comes back, he goes in motion and runs what we call a hide route behind the line of scrimmage, and he just pops out on the side to the right side, puts his hands up, and boom, ball is delivered right to him. He turns his shoulder. He narrowed in. He was looking for work. I mean, he was like, no, I'm not going for the sideline. I'm going for the center line of this guy's body. And he delivered a crushing blow. It took about 3 guys to block him after like a 10-plus yard gain. And on the final one, he did a wham where he came way across the line of scrimmage and kicked out the in-man line of scrimmage. Ryan McCollum rolled behind him on a counter play, and he blew up Quincy Roche. Quincy Roche is mad he got on those tracks. So that was 2 trains, 1 track, and the 53 train won.
In terms of that being a possibility, Kendrick said after practice that, it's just something Coach wanted to see, who knows. But all of his teammates today were like, we can use that. We like that. What are your thoughts?
Patrick Ricard, Baltimore Ravens.
And that's who he mimicked him last year as they were getting ready.
Yeah, and he delivered the boomstick. He showed, a lot of athleticism in the hole, being able to move and hit the different angles. Because, like I said, he pulled up and into the line of scrimmage and was in the middle of the play. Then on the other side, he was setting the edge on a counter play, and then he showed soft hands out of the backfield. And that's all that Patrick Ricard does for the Baltimore Ravens. So when you have someone in your division you see twice a year, every single year, sometimes you pick up some things. And I thought that was something we picked up from Baltimore and using that, and I hope that we continue to expand it because I think when you're looking for people to find a niche on this team, that is a very specific niche that not anybody else on the offensive line can do consistently that he can do. And then you look at another guy like a DeMarvin Leal on the defensive side of the ball where he can play defensive line and play outside linebacker, as we saw pushed into pressure a year ago. So I like the fact that we have these guys who are flex-style players who can offer different things at different moments, and I think that's something where he made his presence known last night.
Well, and position flexibility sometimes comes down to if you get one of those last spots when the team has to, put together the 53-man roster.
Yeah.
Special teams plays a big part in that as well. What else did you take away from Friday Night Lights?
Big chunk plays. Big chunk plays from unlikely sources. Anthony McFarland had a really nice run where he broke out to the left. I thought Calvin Austin had a nice long play from the slot position, about a 50-plus yarder. Hot Rod, as they call him, Rodney Williams in the tight end group, a name we haven't brought up as much because you think of Darnell Washington, you think of Pat Freiermuth and Zach Gentry and Connor Hayward, but Rodney Williams turned on the afterburners last night and scored a touchdown on a long play. And those chunk plays, we only had 3 of those last year. 40-plus yards, and we saw 3 of them in practice last night. So I think that was something to note that I was really excited to watch. The growth of the O-line and the D-line as they get in their competitive periods I thought was really, really good. Watching Darnell Washington and Broderick Jones, college teammates, you wonder why they won 2 national championships. Go watch their run blocking drill. Nothing gets by them. They literally drove – I couldn't remember number 66, the young D lineman. They drove him and put him into the lap of the linebacker. It was awesome to see. So when you see all of those things, it was really fun to watch. But it was a 3-ring circus last night. You got all these guys. You had 90 guys on one field. There's 3 different drills going at one time, and you're trying to catch everything. You can't catch all of it. You have to go back and watch film to really appreciate what was accomplished last night.
What is it like going to that stadium for Friday Night Lights? That has not been there since before COVID, and then last year it got rained out. Just the energy. How do you even put that into words?
So we were talking about this last night. It was a tradition that really started, I want to say, with Cower and making it a Friday Night Lights environment. And I was probably one of the last groups that went to Greensburg. We played at the high school in Greensburg for Friday Night Lights. And then after that, it stayed as a staple here in the city of Latrobe. And what I loved about it is you knew what it was. I mean, it was old school, nostalgic. Bring your pads and your helmet on the cheese wagon, right, on the school bus. And you sit, you find your spot, and you got your pads there. You're wearing all your bottoms. It's like going to a high school game on a Friday if you're the opposing team. And it brings that in. And you go into the stadium. It's rabid. It's packed. The lights are getting bright, and you've got to perform in front of the audience. And to be on only one field, whereas we're afforded a nice opportunity here. When you look back here, we got 4 different fields you can be on. Weather permitting is where you move. But no, it was strictly one field and 90 guys, and y'all made it fit. You had to fit everything in. And everybody got to see a different portion of practice. But then the team periods came, and they were competitive, take them to the ground type of plays. And it's a fun moment. It's a breakup from just coming out here every day at 1:55. Same schedule, same routine. This is a break in the routine. And I think for Mike Tomlin especially, he cherishes these moments because you're going to have a short week. You're going to have unfortunate circumstances, especially during COVID, right? Playing on a Wednesday afternoon even. But you're not going to play 1 o'clock every single day. So, and then you're going to have a short week turnaround. That's what this is today. That's why you have pads on at 1:55 when you didn't get done till 9:30 last night from practice. So it's a great opportunity to really see what some young guys are made of, and if they can actually push through the pain and we're going back to Tomlinisms, not seek comfort in these moments, but embrace them and face them full on.
One of the Tomlinisms a lot of fans were also tweeting was the "we do not care" and how he said it so seriously during that COVID year when the game against Tennessee got moved. I mean, it was just a disaster in terms of the schedule that year, but that's just something that does happen. I think also, the players walk off those school buses holding Sharpies, and to have almost 14,000 fans in that stadium for a chance to be up close and personal, the chain-linked fences, I mean, it's as close as you can get to them, basically.
It is. It's the closest touch you'll get, except for trying to come out here and if you happen to get a pass on the sidelines, right?
Sure.
Which are very rare and few and far between. And it made me actually think of one of my other favorite Tomlinisms. Never say never, but never. that was another one. I had to throw that out there since we were in the theme. But it was funny to hear, to have that pop in my head as we're talking. But I think, for the fans, this is the great opportunity. And I feel like for the Steelers, this is a great opportunity to kind of pay it forward to the community for allowing us to come here for essentially about almost 60 years now. And the city of Latrobe embraces us. St. Vincent's College embraces us, and they allow us to come here and really become the summer home of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is a true rite of passage for all of the players. We have 52 new faces on that field right now that have never done this before, and they got their first introduction to not only the Steelers way and Steelers style of football, but also the family and community responsibility that you have as a Steeler to be in the environment, in the community, and to make a difference and an impact, whether it's through the entertainment like practices, but also going and doing the service part of signing autographs.
It's crazy to think about. Alex Highsmith just signed his, big extension prior to camp. He had never been to a Friday Night Lights because of COVID and all the different things that have happened. It just feels like he's been here long enough that he should have had experienced that, but he has not.
No, I mean, and like I said, it's a brand new experience for a lot of guys. especially when you're thinking of the COVID year guys and guys who came shortly after COVID, and getting into that environment where everybody feels comfortable enough to have that. Like we tried to have it last year, but it was an unholy amount of water that poured down right as we were getting on the bus. And we sat there for a look, because I remember getting on the bus, and we sat there for a minute. And actually, Alex came and sat next to me. It was him and Claypool that came on our bus. And they're like, man, I'm looking forward to this. And I'm like, yeah, if it happens, because the rain, was coming sideways. You couldn't see. And then, of course, they eventually had to go to the gym, and then they tried to redo it on a Monday afternoon. Didn't have the same effect. People have jobs. So to get a full Friday Night Lights is pretty special.
Well, like you said, even in the high school days of Friday night, the whole community comes out to cheer for the home team. There's just something about that environment that you can't replicate on a different day of the week.
No, you can't. And I was with Mike Pursuta yesterday on the show. He was talking about this is the quintessential Western PA town, where you have a football field in the entire town, a steel mill on one side, a church on the other, and the whole Norman Rockwell painting. If you're painting Western PA football, and that's what you get. You get that nostalgia and that history every time they get to play at Latrobe Memorial Stadium.
We're looking down now at the offensive line as the Steelers are warming up for this practice here on a beautiful, little hot Saturday afternoon at St. Vincent College. As we talked about Kendrick Green playing some fullback last night for Friday Night Lights. We had a chance to catch up with him before practice today.
Found out yesterday, right before practice. So I play center since I know a lot of what they do anyways. That was my first time doing it though, so I don't think it'll be nothing too serious though. So.
Really? Looked like it went pretty well.
It was a good time, but we'll see. I don't know.
Did you ever do anything like that before?
In high school, yeah. I used to get the ball and stuff here and there, but yeah.
It looks like it's more fun with the running start.
Yeah, it's different for sure. Some momentum. That was nice, but yeah.
You still have hands?
Yeah, I can catch a little bit. He's worked a little bit just from playing backyard football back in the day. So.
How come you don't think it's anything too serious?
I'm still meeting with the O-line and stuff like that. So playing center, So, but like you said, I don't know. We'll see. But as of now, it's nothing too crazy. I'm not, got my hopes up or anything like that. So.
Well, in theory, if they're on the 1 yard line and you've been going to the center meetings for 8 weeks, could they throw you in there for a snap on 4th and 1?
I would know what I was doing when I'm doing, so I guess maybe we'll see.
Is it something you would want to do more of? If they said, hey, what do you think about this?
Do whatever Mike Tomlin tells me to do. So.
All right, we could not have timed this up better, Max. Kendrick kind of downplayed it a little bit there prior to practice, but if you take a look on the screen, you see that he's working with a different group right now.
Yeah, you see him working on his ball securing skills in the air there, putting the hand curling over the nose of the football. But yes, he is standing next to Anthony McFarland, which means he is not with the offensive line right now. And in fact, he is on the opposite side of the field working with the running backs.
I think it was interesting whenever we were on this program when we found out that Monty Pottebaum had retired. It was kind of like, huh? And then there were no corresponding roster moves that screamed fullback, but maybe this is something they're trying to figure out.
Did you see that spin move?
Sure did.
Nice little spin move. Okay, and Fredo is giving him a little bit of help on that, but yeah, this is something. There was Monty Pottebaum's unexpected retirement. As soon as he got here, and then now you see a void where it's like we at least planned on some things, right? Because Derek Watt, longtime fullback for this team, wouldn't see a lot of rest, but we saw some. And now it's like, well, who's that guy? Because Connor Hayward, we know, is more of an H-back, right? He's a receiving guy. He's not really a true lead ISO type of body type. I'm sure he could do it if asked, but we know his assets and skills rely on pass catching routes and being unattached off the line of scrimmage and kind of breaking out into the route tree, whereas KG, like you said, wants contact. He likes a running start. So put him in zip motion and let him go take the guy off the edge and blow him up, which he did against Quincy Roche last night. I think is something that you have to explore it more. And with this offensive line depth this year, there's a lot of conversation. But I think really if he could solidify that kind of fullback position, man, that can add so much flexibility in our offense.
Well, you see he's also getting a little cardio in today because now he's back with the offensive line. As you said, they are not close on the same field of where these drills are taking place. But you did mention a little bit earlier just the growth of the offensive line. So what else are you seeing from this group? I know Mason Cole spoke to Mike and Wolf a few days ago just about, we're not there yet, but we're getting there, and just how an O-line goes through the process of gelling.
Well, I think a lot of people kind of get obsessed with, oh, well, this is the same line as last year except for one addition. How different can they be? And I think Mason kind of really hit it. He's like, we're here to pick up where we left off. That's not our ceiling, was not last season, but our floor was last season, and we can only get better. And you remember last year it was a lot of turnover because you had a brand-new center and a brand-new right guard in James Daniels and Mason Cole. So adding one piece in the offseason at left guard 2 years ago, that's a completely different unit. So you've really redone this group, and then you throw in a third-year guy in Dan Moore, who's had only 2 years at left tackle and kind of thrown into it because of the injury of Zach Banner. And Chooks Okorafor was originally supposed to go at left tackle. Zach Banner was going to be a right, but then because of that injury, they moved Chooks back to right tackle and put Dan Moore in. So this team has not been – steady where you can say, oh, this team group's played together for 5 years. No, it's been a lot of change every single year. It's just the change this year wasn't as big, but it was a big one as far as continuity and experience, putting Isaac Siamalu at the left guard position and, for all intents and purposes, demoting Kevin Dotson in that position, but allowing Kevin to really hone in on his skills. So we have two really good lines because Nate Herbig is the guard in the second team unit who's been taking some center snaps as well. And then you have a William Dunkel, another year under the system, and then Broderick Jones. And now we've seen Spencer Anderson start to take some reps at right and left tackle, start to cross-train, has also done some guard work. So now you're starting to see this line kind of fill out, and you realize there's some really good competition going on, and we are a year ago was not in this position where we had this many options.
Well, I think, too, with Broderick Jones, Kenny Pickett was a first-round draft pick as well. The Steelers did not rush him into that starting job. It probably happened sooner than they thought. I think with Broderick, he seems to be okay with the way the process is going. Of course, he wants to start. There is a reason why the Steelers traded up to get him as well. But I think, as you said, Dan Moore is getting better with the experience and knowing that he's getting better and adjusting to the NFL, even though from everything the Georgia guys say, their practices were crazy
George Pickens.
in college. But I just think, it's not something that has to happen right away, and who knows when. And, you got to kind of just let the process go. It is a journey, as Coach Tomlin would say.
Well, and it's a slow cooker process with offensive linemen because one thing we also have to remember, Broderick Jones is only 20 years old. The kid still has braces, okay? just for perspective purposes, he is 20. So there's no need to rush him. It's not like he's from BYU and he's 24 years old coming in as a rookie, or a 6-year guy like a Kenny Pickett who comes in a little bit more mature. He's still very young, and every rep is a good rep because he's learning something in the process. Now, one of the things that he does have to kind of get out of is ducking his head on the counter move to the inside and also ducking before punching, but that's something he's going to learn over time. He just hadn't learned and had as much time to learn that, because also you think about him at the left tackle position. He really had his first real full year at left tackle last year for Georgia because Jamari Sawyer, who's now with the Chargers, was the left tackle on the first national championship team. So there's a lot of room for improvement. So why do I want to throw him out there week 1 against Nick Bosa and then follow it up with Myles Garrett in the second game? And then, oh, by the way, when you think you're catching your breath, you get Max Crosby and Chandler Jones and the Raiders in week 3. So to put him through that gauntlet at the beginning would be unfair for his progress because this is a guy who will be in his 10th year at the age of 30. He will see a second, if not third, contract by the time he hits 30 years old because he's that young. So why am I rushing when I know the long game is to have him starting for this team 10, 11, 12, 13 years down the road?
Flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, let's stick with the line since we're talking about growth there. What have you seen from that group specifically since the pads have gone on and we've got to see a lot more action, football-like things?
A lot of competition. A very deep wide receiver room. We have our known suspects, right? We have Deontay Johnson, we have George Pickens, and we have Allen Robinson, who we picked up in the offseason, a 10-year vet. That's a good starting lineup anywhere in this NFL. But now, let's think of second wave. Cody White, Miles Boykin, Calvin Austin as well. And then, you look at some other guys that have just kind of shown us some nice flashes, has been the young guys. I can't remember 84's name, but he's come up a couple of times in practice. And you're looking at, okay, well, how many guys? Gunnar Olszewski has had a solid camp. He looked like jailbreak a couple of times where guys just lost him amidst everything else. And I think Hakeem Butler also acquitted himself very well as a big body guy, also kind of competing for a gunner/receiver position on this team. So, I mean, there's a lot of talent on that group and very competitive, but yet very supportive at the same time. You don't see guys kind of getting mad at each other and being testy because they might not get a rep or they might not get the ball thrown their way. All of them are doing their job when asked of it and doing it with a smile and making a lot of catches in the process.
We've talked about Allen Robinson, I can get that out there, and why they brought him in. They wanted a veteran presence for that room, and he goes back to when he was the young guy, and he's like, there was no veteran presence. And I remember what that was like, where in my second and third year, I was the veteran. So now he has the more experience under his belt, but it is just interesting from that perspective of having a guy like that, and there's a reason why we've been over the roommate pairings and whatnot, that Coach Tomlin does things like that.
Yeah, you got an adult in the room, as he'd like to say, right? You need an adult in the room with all of these young guys to wrangle them in, and no better one than a guy who's been in the league 10 years, right? I mean, you can't get too much better. And you could see his influence rubbing off on these guys. The way that they go about practice, the business-like approach has been very fun to watch. Now, George Pickens is George Pickens, and they're roommates. But you can see, George, you have to have a certain level of confidence when you're playing the wide receiver position. And you're drawing the premium eyeballs because you were last year's second-round pick and phenom, and this year's second-round pick is also the son of a former Steelers legend, and he presents a physical, similarity to you. So Joey Porter Jr. and George Pickens have had some great battles at camp thus far. But Ike Taylor was one of the guys that I talked to, and he kind of shared this with us is, you need to get a lot of reps against a lot of different body types. And that's what this wide receiver room presents for a young DB because you got the tall, lean, fast guy who makes the acrobatic catches in George Pickens. You have a technical route runner in Deontay Johnson.
Right.
You've got pure speed in Calvin Austin. And then you have shifty, veteran-like capabilities in Allen Robinson. So it's like pick your poison. And if you're a young DB, you get the opportunity of playing against all of these guys because you're going to see that type at every point this season. It's not going to just be Jamar Chase and T. Higgins 17 weeks in a row. You're going to get the smaller OBJs. You're going to get fast receivers and scat guys who can do a lot of different things. The Hunter Renfros, right? So it's good to see all of those body types out here and get a good rep. And this wide receiver room represents that.
George Pickens, as you said, I don't think he lacks confidence at all, as you said, a wide receiver needs. I also thought it was crazy, Max, how he said after that crazy catch he had over Joey Porter Jr., he didn't have his phone on for almost an entire day and then turned it on and saw that people were talking about it.
Yeah.
But Coach Tomlin also said, flipping over to Joey Porter Jr., that he's a quick learner. What have you seen from him just in the last week or so because of these battles that they're having in pads?
So I'll give you one prime example right here, Missi. First day of pads. They had a one-on-one DB versus wide receiver drill. Joey Porter Jr. gets matched up against Deontay Johnson. Deontay puts him in the spin cycle. And because of that, his own footwork knocked him down against Deontay, and Deontay just made a nice, easy grab. That was day one. Fast forward to last night, they had a route, and you saw Joey Porter Jr. sticking to Deontay like glue and then eventually breaking up the pass. That's the growth. That's the quick learner that we're looking because that was only the fourth padded practice. And he learned from pad day 1 to pad day 4 what he needed to do. And I thought that was a great example of a young guy learning from his mistakes and making up for it.
Is there anybody else in that group that's standing out to you?
Elijah Riley, and that's more safety than
Sure.
cornerback. But Elijah Riley has just put together some great tape. He's had a couple interceptions in camp, a lot of pass breakups, and he's made some good moves in the run game and run support. Another guy Levi Wallace, I had to come back to it. I know he's not a young guy, but Levi just gets the job done. And it's not necessarily going to be something you can go do coaching tape off of where it's technically sound every single rep, but he gets the job done, and he's solid. Patrick Peterson, consummate leader,
Yeah.
future Hall of Famer. Let's just call it what it is. He's a future Hall of Famer.
It's Hall of Fame weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Hall of Fame weekend. Once he decides to retire 5 years later, put him on the first ballot and let's get it done with, right? I mean, he was Revis Island 2.0 after Darrelle Revis. He is a lockdown man press corner, but he's bringing the knowledge. He has that player coach. You know, I was an Orlando Magic fan and a ball boy growing up, and there was one player, Tree Rollins. Tree Rollins was designated when I had his Fleer basketball card. It said player coach.
Right.
They had a picture of him in a suit one game and in a uniform the next. That's what Pat Peterson brings to this group. And even though you do have a Minka that's in this group, that's a veteran, that's solid, and Levi's had his years, but it's something when you have a guy of Pat Peterson's ilk come in here. It sets the tone to a different level. It takes the standard to a different level, and he's been everything and more. Grady Brown praises him. This isn't the first time he's had to coach Pat, and he's happy that he's here with him in Pittsburgh. And Pat Peterson made a statement to me because I've known Pat for a long time, and Pat goes, Max, I finally made it. I've been talking about this for years. I'm finally here. I'm a Steeler. Yeah, so I was like, absolutely, Pat. Glad to have you, bro. And that's what he brings to this. So, I mean, those are just some of the names. But, I mean, Trey Norwood's grown a lot this year and really shown up in the pass game and also in the run game. You know, I look at Chandon Sullivan. Chandon Sullivan's had some nice plays. Kenny Robinson, who came in really short notice after the Trice injury and has really put his stamp on being a competitor in here. That whole group has just really, really grown a lot. Duke Dawson and Keanu Neal kind of going at it at that nickel slot position, and that looks to be a good battle. Hopefully we get Keanu back soon. But, yeah, I mean, all these DBs is another immensely deep, talented, and competitive room that coming into camp, I don't know if we necessarily thought that because of the mass exodus of players, but it has really shown itself so far in camp.
And not that we don't love Pat P and can't talk about him enough. Just one quick thing that I, had heard from Mitch Trubisky this week. It's not just helping defensive guys. He will go straight up to the quarterback or the wide receiver and say, hey, here's what I did. This is why I won that one. Here's what I saw from you. Here's what was the give to help the other side of the ball as well. And as you said, just a true professional, future Hall of Famer who, as you just said, is just so happy to be here. He's like a little kid that woke up on Christmas morning every single day because he's a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yes, and he's a guy, when you look around the league, there's very few guys you could say, man, that guy needs to be a Steeler. He was one of those guys consistently for years. Like, he's more Steeler than the team he represents, albeit the Cardinals or the Vikings. He needs to be in black and gold. He's gotten close. He got purple and gold, just did not hit it all the way on the mark till this year. And I tell you what, it's a joy to look down there and see him playing, and he's still having fun. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing. And I think if Lil Peasy Jr. can amass that role at outside corner, putting Pat P in the slot is going to be terror for other teams. But if he has to go outside until Peasy matures, he can go do that, and he'll do it gladly. But I would love to see him get a little more free roam responsibility, especially when you throw in KZ and Minka Fitzpatrick. Mm-hmm. That is a heck of a trio.
We're looking at the quarterbacks as well with the wide receivers still warming up here at St. Vincent College. What have you seen from Kenny Pickett over the last few days? We already talked about 7 shots last night and, how the offense was working so well.
Just growth. I mean, going through his progressions, staying more steady in the pocket. A year ago, the offense wasn't really catered to you, and you're trying to make it work, right? And you're trying to insert yourself with guys you don't really have a rapport with. Because this time last year, he's third string. He's throwing more often, to Cody White than he was to Deontay Johnson. And I think that led to a little bit of the disconnect during the season. But it's the growth. It's the maturation. It's the decision-making. It's also the chances of taking the ball deep. He didn't really throw the ball deep a year ago. He was just trying to get completions out and trying to find the first fastest read in his progression. And now you see him going deeper in it, stepping back, looking at it, waiting for guys to get open, and learning kind of the nuance of his guys when they turn the shoulders, when are they at the top of the route. So you see an elevated understanding for the second-year quarterback.
The Steelers today in pads once again. Tomorrow is their final practice before their second off day of camp, and then practice on Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday they travel to Tampa. Friday we finally have preseason football. Do you think the guys start thinking about that game after the day off, or is it the first preseason game? You know you're not game planning. It's still just focusing on what's happening at training camp.
I think it's more of a training camp emphasis until you get to about Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Wednesday, where you're like, oh, man, we're going to go hit other guys. And also because it's a travel game, it's like Thursday's a travel day. Thank God we don't have practice or real big walkthroughs. Just make it to the airport on time and make sure that the plane does not take off without me is like the emphasis. But it is something that you have to look at and you have to have it on your mind because it is your first competitive reps. And if your guys in the second and third team, you realize you're going to play a majority of this game. And if you're a guy who you start counting the room, you're like, man, I got to audition for 31 other teams as well. I mean, there's a reason why the Hall of Fame game was up and in the room earlier today. You're still getting judged by everybody else around the league. So put your best foot forward here, and it might not be here where you land, but you might land somewhere else in 31 other locations that would gladly have your services. So you can't take any time off. You can't really take it easy at any moment because you never know what the future holds.
Because it's back-to-back days and pads and it was such a short turnaround, do you think maybe today we see one of the camp fights, or you think we're going to maybe get through this?
We almost had one last night. Spencer Anderson had a defensive lineman in a chokehold at one point, and the coaches had to run over and, like, break it up. So, I mean, we've seen that, start to pepper and fizzle a little bit. But, Coach Towns does not like fights.
No.
And I would not be surprised if maybe a punch or two gets thrown.
All right. Well, the fans already, as you see, they're down on the sideline. Thanks so much for joining us here today on Training Camp Live presented by FedEx. Make sure you join us after practice for the wrap-up show. We'll see you guys then.